All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Saturday night. That means it is time for the Weekly Dig. For anyone new to the stream, this is a live show where we dig into anime old and new. I'm Brent. These are my ridiculously awesome co-hosts. John. Say hi, John.
Hi, John.
And Steve. Say hi, Steve.
Hi, coming to you from the Wired. Not intentionally, but here I am.
Definitely. He's going to start chattering any minute.
Oh, that was so creepy. Oh my god.
Multiple personality disorder off to this.
I have some insights into that this week, but because we're going to start our dig tonight by analyzing episodes 7 through 8 of the Serial Experiments Laine. Now, I took some notes about this. Actually, John and I happened to watch this together, and
nice.
To my surprise, I only took like half a page of notes total on these episodes. Partly because these episodes are really just kind of continuing on. They're really just kind of building plot-wise. There's not too much in terms of like crazy, weird new symbolism here. We'll get to that later in the show. Don't worry. But we start with episode 7, Society.
Yeah.
And we start with some interesting imagery. This whole coil of pipes and such, which I now realize, as of playing the Laine game last night, this is a reference to the PlayStation 1 game and the like homunculus creature that she's building in that game, which is hanging from like hanging from the ceiling, and looks very similar to this and has like wires and cables hanging off it. So this is imagery very much like that in the PlayStation 1. Yeah, Laine is actually building an artificial human in the Laine game. It's a trip.
Ah.
Yeah.
Is it named Tetsuo?
Unknown so far. It does have a name. We haven't gotten there yet. But we get Laine on the wire.
Big boat face.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we get Laine mucking about on the internet, and we get our first glimpse of crazy internet guy, which I know does not narrow it down.
I was gonna say, don't forget poor old broken Mika.
Ah, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. So.
No, she's just.
Yeah. So Mika looked in on Laine, and you're right. Mika is definitely. We've seen her start to break down, and she's not barely verbal at this point.
Well, after that experience in the hallway where she sees the other Mika and then the shadow Mika.
But remember, she walks away from that fine.
Yeah, and I think that was because she was still in shock, and now it's just like she's just broken.
I don't think so, because she, her expression isn't shocked when she walks away. She's just, oh, okay, and she just turns and walks away. But
what do you think then led to this spot now where like she's so evidently shattered mentally?
Because as we've been seeing, she is being more and more affected by something.
Do you think it's because Laine has the wired persona and the actual Laine of the real world, and now that Mika doesn't have both parts, do you think that maybe that's why it's an eventual degradation, and that she's doesn't have that soul, because that would have been the soul, maybe? I don't know.
I think
Signal degradation.
I think she's being targeted by the Knights. I think that the Knights are clearly testing out the kids system. It's why you see the Knights logo during her crazy dream. And I think it's driving her crazy. Because I think the Knights can't get to Laine. They can't get to her parents, because they're protected by Touch Bundle Labs. But I think Mika is vulnerable. And she's in the middle of all of this. And so the Knights are kind of trying to figure out what they can with Mika. But certainly, she's not having a great time.
No.
It should also be pointed out, if your teenage daughter was stumbling around like this, would you do something? Probably.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, when your other adoptive or other daughter, whatever she might be, goes into the kitchen to get something to drink, and she's babbling and talking to you, do you just sit at the table and stare straight off into space like a complete jerk? No.
And then you both turn around and just go.
And say nothing. Like, oh, okay. Well,
yep.
Good parenting.
Yeah. Awesome. Parents. So yes. So we know things are going poorly here. And actually, I should say, if indeed Miko was the waitress at Siberia, that would also explain why she's kind of going nuts if the weirdness from Siberia is affecting her brain too. So I don't know if that's true, but interesting connection.
I would also imagine, we don't... Laine is not in a world of Wi-Fi and The Wired.
Mm-hmm.
So, in Laine's room, she does have things that are either somehow holographically projected above her, that they're in a space but not on a monitor. It would not shock me if you said Mika is like literally suffering the effects of what Laine is doing is irradiating everybody in the entire house.
Well, and
would shock me.
And more directly, we have hints, and we'll see more of this later in the show, about frequency resonances.
Yeah.
If all this stuff is sort of emanating out, not radiation specifically in the sense of mutation radiation, but radiation, in the sense of electronic signals, absolutely, it could be screwing with Mika dramatically.
And when you're looking at her Navi screens, all of them, you keep getting this pulsive that kind of comes out almost like a radar pulse that is happening constantly on there. And it's like, okay, there are questions about whether exposure to that kind of high and low frequency has a psychological effect.
Stay tuned. We will see more about that later. So then we get a couple of interesting sort of plot threads that start weaving in. We get crazy internet guy wandering around the streets with his thing.
I love that guy.
And this is also partly a play on, and I'm forgetting the name of the guy, but there was a guy in the 90s who was carried a video camera with him at all times and was recording his entire life, and I think he was working at MIT. He also had these corded keyboard gloves where he could actually type. So he basically had a computer on him at all times, and he could type with his corded keyboard. And it was all feeding into this hardware. And the idea was, he said, with electronics, I can record every second of my life and then have a record of that I can then play back and have an external memory for my entire life. And he's kind of experimenting with that and playing around with that. And there was some folks kind of not having fun with that, but reporting on that and talking about that. And to be clear, he said, this is very wild, but I'm experimenting with what that might look like in the future. And
I'm just trying to think of the family gathering where I show them 8 million hours of VHS cassettes, and here's the time I walked across the street.
Yeah.
Kill me, Bill. Kill me.
And then we cut to Perby guy with his secretary.
Yeah, Basic Instinct.
Yeah, the Basic Instinct scene. That's exactly what it is.
Yep.
As the secretary comes in, it should be noted, and this is a thing I mentioned to John, she looks very much like the psychiatrist in the Laine game. I don't know if that's a connection.
She does. Yeah.
But it could just be, hey, character design. And also, frankly, it's long-haired Asian lady, right? It's just a long-haired woman.
Right.
Yeah, but still, it's possible.
Well, the one thing I rewatched it again because between the notes you were taking, my slightly falling asleep in our conversation, I'm like, hey, I just probably better sit and watch this again. At one point, this woman gets up and walks across the screen, and damn if it doesn't look like, what is it, Makoto, the officer lady.
Huh.
And I was just like, wait a minute, because the turn of her head and the way she proceeds forward like that reminded me of Makoto. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Huh, interesting.
It's just probably character, just design.
Yeah.
Just that's a simple woman character doing thing.
You said Makoto. Ghost in the Shell or Evangelion?
Evangelion, sorry.
Evangelion. Okay, so Misato.
Misato.
Okay, gotcha. Sure, no problem. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know how I remember that name.
Yeah. But the way that Misato walks in like certain scenes, like she's going back to her car and stuff. It's that same kind of head, like tilt, same kind of hair movement, and I'm like, that's really weird. It must be just an archetype for like this kind of woman character.
And the short skirt.
Yeah.
You know, this is fairly similar outfit. Yeah, I can see that. Evangelion had come out 3 years earlier, so it was definitely fresh on the mind. So that would totally make sense.
They're stealing off of
it. Exactly. They were the last people to ever steal off Evangelion.
Exactly. Precisely.
Yes. And then we see, and I just noticed this. We cut to the guy's screen. I just noticed it's portrait mode, which is a really cool thing. And again, this is a thing that we see every so often in technology is you can rotate your screen, and it's really awesome. Yeah. That was an occasional feature that some monitors had that nobody does anymore.
Yeah, it was an occasional feature, and I remember seeing him at the time. Like, why would you pay that much to do that? Like, insane.
And to that point, that's kind of that's a clue, besides everything else, that he has the cash.
Oh yeah.
Not to mention his absurd view of Demon City Shinjuku down there. And so then we get Laine in class. Typing in. I want to see if I can see what the code is. Yep, so that is Lisp. So Laine, we now see in class, Laine is working on her phone, her personal navy, and she's actually in a coding window. And what's cool about this, and one of the reasons I got so involved in Laine, is because this is actually what a software development environment looks like. This is actually what coding looks like. This is a window. Those letters IDE, that is Integrated Development Environment, that's what it's called today when you're coding. Wow. So they got this right. And Lisp is a very niche language designed for artificial intelligence. Not designed for artificial intelligence, but often used in AI research and AI stuff and so forth. And why that's relevant is that this is not a beginner's programming language. This is not, Laine was learning Pascal in episode 1. She has moved way beyond that. A lot of programmers do not move off of their first programming language for a while. She has gone really far.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, as I pointed out when we were watching it, it's like Laine's phone is far different than the original phone that Laine had.
She's got the little things on there.
Yeah, it's got like an antenna hookup, it's got a stylus hookup, and it's a wired stylus. At a point later, you see it has an entire ribbon cable bundle that goes with it. And when watching it third time now, I still can't ascertain whether or not the black cabling that is coming out and looks like it's touching her leg. I cannot tell whether that is just the cabling for the stylus, or is that cabling for like another element, or is it literally somehow cabled into like an external battery. You know what I mean? Like, Laine's not wearing anything. She's just got her school uniform. But that cable, like for the power that she's drawing on this thing, I would almost think she'd need some kind of external power source to power this crap.
Which, lest we forget, in 1998, you did not have external battery packs for, your Palm Pilot. So she definitely would have had to rig that up. And as we see later in the screenshot, she's literally screwed it on. Like, she's bolted it onto the chassis. Right.
She's good at rigging things.
Yeah, it's that did not come with it to plug in.
So, was this about the time when I started getting because the episodes are blending a little bit together for me? Is this about the time when you hear the chalk on the board and then there's the shot of the classroom and you realize there's nothing on the chalkboard, but you hear the teacher doing on the chalk, and I was just like going, what? No.
It's worth noting because in the past, in other shots, we do see stuff on the chalkboard. It is possible, just to get that out of the way, that she has erased the board and is starting something new, but that is not what we see here at the time. And it should be noted, this is the remastered version. So if this was a mistake, they had the chance to fix it and did not.
Well, going back to your earlier comment, where she's starting off with Pascal, and now she's so far advanced, what was written on the chalkboard to start with was where she started. Now Laine is beyond what they can write on that chalkboard. You know what I mean? It's like, so it might literally just be blank because there's no further information that Laine needs from that source. That she's doing it herself on her portable Navi. Cell Navi.
Yeah, totally. And Alice sees this and is concerned, of course. And so now we start seeing bits of other characters. We see Fat Guy from Paranoia Agent, who is in there. And this is, again, kind of a parody. There are a lot of these, NEETs, hikikomori, who are in their things, kind of making.
I have to get me a headband like that. Yeah. Bandana's useless. I can't look like that like this.
Exactly. More from the chat asks, when is Laine supposed to take place? Obvious answer. Present day, present time.
Present time.
Yes.
And it is meant to be in kind of an unspecified near future to kind of really answer the question. But yeah, it's kind of like, and it's one of the things, and Kanaka, the writer, is very clear that he says, when he writes these things, they're about what's going on right now, and that's kind of I'm assuming the point of that, opening is to say, this is not, just concerned about the future. This is concerned about today and what we're currently going through. Kanaka apologized for the fat programming and taco stereotype. Fair. And, I mean, I didn't get offended by that because, you have other folks in the Knights organization who are clearly not that. So he's just one of many. And so it's like, okay. Cone did it too, so I can't be too depressed about it. But yeah. And also, and we talked about this before, there is a point at which you're trying to connect with an audience that doesn't understand all the details. You go with the stereotype. Right. But yeah, exactly. And then you get one of the scenes, which, not to get into spoilers, is fairly important, where Alice actually sits down with Laine and says, "Are we okay?" Basically. Yeah. And it's a really sad scene. I remember watching this the first time and going, "Oh, wow, Alice really has it together." It's really nice for her to realize, wait, Alice has changed. Did I do something wrong? Has something changed? I need to address this. And I love how Alice kind of opens it out to say, have I pushed your boundaries too far? Was I kind of presumptuous about how social you wanted to be?
You seem to be slipping again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. We thought it would make you happy if we included you and brought you along. It's like,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Alice has got a big heart. I mean,
she absolutely.
There's a lot of weird going on that would be. I mean, I don't think you'd solve the general problem. But
no.
As an individual part of this, you could have been like, "Wow, weird out."
Yeah,
guy.
exactly.
But she sticks in there.
Absolutely.
Laine really struggling with
this. And I really love how Laine reacts to this, because it is so I think true to the life of kind of a classic introvert response, where she's trying to get it out, but she can't quite form the words, and she's just kind of holding it in, but also trying to get it out, and it's wonderfully awkward in the way that real relationships actually are, which I really appreciated. That's something you normally see. And imagine Alice meeting Mika. You think this is weird?
Yeah. Here's my broken sister. How you doing?
Yeah.
Well, I think this also kind of, watching this made me feel like Alice is the one that is more emotionally mature.
Yeah, definitely.
And that it really feels, even though they're supposed to be the same grade, they're all together, it really super feels like Laine is almost along the lines emotionally of like an elementary schooler. She's not entirely functional at expressing what's going on with her. And Alice is like trying to reach out to her and to help her along, because that would be unusual for a high school girl, or at least a girl of their similar age, to be that emotionally unrefined, I guess, maybe?
Inexperienced. Well, I mean...
Emotionally inexperienced.
Yes, absolutely. And you see that in kind of their little group, you know. Alice is definitely kind of the emotional heart of the group. Reika is kind of, is the sassy one. The Reika is the pretend adult, right? Yeah. She's the one who's like, oh, I'm mature. Julie is the still kind of the kid, but kind of joyfully so. She's just experiencing life and enjoying it. While Laine is...
She's Bubbles.
Yeah, she's Bubbles, exactly. Oh, we need to have that image now. Wow! It's the Powerpuff Girls. It totally is.
That's just exactly what I was thinking. Bubbles, because she's got the twin tails. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, haha!
That's awesome. I know what I'll be posting to TikTok in a little while. Anyway, so that's absolutely, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. And as Morphle was saying, Alice is the one kind of keeping Laine in the real world, which is definitely true. Kind of her anchor, so to speak. And so then we could just get a bunch of internet stuff about the Knights, because it's really what it is. And we get Delivery Guy again. Kind of nice seeing the connection through.
Yeah.
With the bored housewife, and I love the interaction here because it's such a classic. And Kanaka's written a lot of stuff, and he has a big. There's a, we all know where this scene could have gone, and I love that he just addresses it just straight up. That he's kind of flirting with this bored housewife, and she's like, "Are you flirting with a bored housewife?" Like, no.
Okay, sort of. Yeah. I love that he goes, "Well, sorta."
Yeah.
It's like, no, you are. Or
exactly.
You aren't.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a totally appropriate answer to feel out the audience. Is she receptive or not? She says, "Oh, you come on in." It's like, oh, good, it worked.
Exactly.
But that's the first. That's the first clue, though. That conversation is the first clue that you get for that about her.
Yeah.
Not being, the bored housewife. She goes, "Oh, do you think you can teach me about this?" Yeah,
she is so in control. Throughout this entire conversation, and afterwards you think, oh, it's kind of this funny flirty thing. No. She was totally testing him, playing him the entire time. Nicely done. And of course, kid runs in and starts playing a game because that's what kids do. And also, again, I kind of appreciate the future forecasting of kids play video games all day. Pretty much. And she takes out
the entertainment center.
Yeah. Totally. Let's bring that out. Yeah, totally.
Massive.
That is.
I was a little jealous.
Radio, death.
Yeah.
CD player. I bet you the laser display.
And
in there
it should be pointed out. I just realized that is a Bose sound system. BOSE is written out in English on that in that screen.
That. Yeah.
It's like, dang.
Somebody got a couple of dollars from sponsorship. Right?
Mm-hmm. And again, it's a clue. This is a tech-heavy household.
A money-capable household.
Yes. And then she gets a board with a very unusual image on it, one that we've seen before.
Wonderfully clearly placed in bubble wrap.
Yes, exactly.
Like, wow.
Boom.
That's amazing.
Nice, exactly. And then we get the flip, as I call it in Laine. This is the scene in the sequence where the show finally starts to come together in some way. And again, one thing I really appreciate where the Men in Black are like, all right, come with us. Like, we're going to actually have a thing here. You're actually going to meet somebody who knows something. And they take her, and again, I like the little symbolism here where she asks what's going on. And then I'm forgetting the name of the tall guy. Carl, thank you. He takes off the headgear, which again is kind of the let me look on you once with my own eyes. Exactly. And yeah, and it's very much this sort of vulnerability that he's showing her. And then, a 14-year-old girl gets into a car with two strange men. That's smart, Laine. Good job. Well done.
All based on the promise. Oh, we promise you no physical harm.
Yeah, it'll all be fine. Sure.
And we'll tell you what's going on after you get in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh.
Sure.
Or some candy.
And, I mean...
Get into our white box van.
Right.
Oh, boy, this is not going to go well.
And again, kind of in fairness, if you will, not like one episode before, they had called her outside and distracted her so she wouldn't get caught in the explosion in her room. Yeah. So she knows they're looking out for her on some level. But still.
Yeah, still weird. But did you notice that the hole's plugged up with all those wires?
Yes. Laine's been redecorating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drafting.
Yeah, the sort of Cthulhuoid monster that sort of latched onto the side of the...
It's her external heat sink.
Yeah, probably.
Also, the thought that occurred to me as I was watching this, that scene where you've got the chunk of stuff coming out of the side of the house, notice how all of our humming wires lead directly into her home?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like, there's the two connection points there, and it's like all the wires go there. And it's just like, wait a minute. Hold on.
Yeah.
Most of the feed stuff, you have, like, the phone line part, and then the power line. You don't have, like, 6 power lines and then something else.
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
Yep. Laine needs power.
Yeah, and she's being actively provided it, not just, doing something on her own to, like, hook into it. No, somebody is actively making sure that those power lines are in there for her to do her thing.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's just Dad.
No. And so they drive... Go ahead.
I was just saying Gendo.
Yeah, I can hear
Would you like some Tang with your power?
Yeah.
Oh.
And here's a good example. So when I first watched Laine, I was fairly new to anime, so I didn't know Japanese culture very well. I didn't know the urban symbolism, if you will. They take her to this seedy ass little part of town. I just got to say it. Like, this is not where you would expect the company that controls the internet to have an office. And it's one of the reasons why Laine is clearly freaked out, because this is, especially again, this is not where you take a young girl who's going to have a good time.
Why is there a video camera? No.
Right, exactly.
Well, this is the Shinbashi office.
Right,
so,
yes.
Right. Tachibana Corporation, this is like this is where they send the people instead of, like, going to the quiet room because they've done something wrong.
Yep. Oh, I think we lost John there. There we go.
Am I still here?
Yep, you're back now.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
How are you?
Fine now. Exactly. And in she goes. And future reference, we'll get back to this later. She's standing by a door, and she doesn't want to go in, and Carl just sort of gently pushes her in. Into this bare room with a guy in the center of it, with a computer. Very Lynchian, really.
Yeah.
But watching it now, I realize so clearly staged.
Yeah.
This is set up for her. And again, looking at it now, this whole conversation is brilliant because she sees this weird thing and he goes, I can't get this computer working. It's not working right. And that intrigues Laine, and she comes over and she looks down and goes, yeah, I just really like this old Navi. And again, that is clearly like a 286 PC, right? Like we've all,
with the rotary phone.
With the rotary phone.
I'm just surprised they didn't have the modem cradle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The thing I thought was interesting too about this scene is the fact that, again, it's reds and oranges.
Yeah, the yellows in here are very strong.
You have a lot of this lighting is just that window. Mm-hmm. And it is in stark contrast to later in their conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you know what I mean? It's like Laine is, moving forward to go see what this guy is inviting her to look at. So she's in that direction. It's like the shadows, everything, she is moving that direction to do this stuff. And it's just like...
Yeah. It should also be pointed out, like, there are definitely father elements in this, you know, the symbology around fathers and so forth. And there's definitely here too, and she's kind of looking towards the light, and also this sort of man who is not dissimilar to her father. So there's certainly some symbolism there too.
It's much more communicative than
very much so.
Yeah.
And so the reason I love this is that, again, if you got Laine coming in and you know who Laine is, Laine doesn't know who you are, how do you engage her? Right? Yeah. You don't ask her how she's doing, you don't ask her, but if you ask her about computers, she knows what to say there, and it's a way of drawing her in and starting the conversation. And it's just so smart. And then, you know, why don't you do it? Which is such a brilliant conversational tactic to get someone kind of off their guard, get them used to something. Now they're helping you. It's just all of the conversational tactics are being used here really smartly by this guy to get Laine doing stuff and talking to her. Whereupon he starts dropping the mic.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was such a, and it was like an instant switch like that. Because I, you know, like like you said, it was I'm watching this, and you know, he's very comforting. You know, it's almost like, you know, the doddering father who's just, I just can't get this to work. You know, can you
darn VCRs.
You know, can't you just tell me how to turn the timer on? Anyway, so technology. And so she's going into this, and then suddenly she's, like you said, the mic drop. She says, "Do you know who you are? Do you know your birthday? Do you know your father's birthday?" And it's this line of questioning, and it's just, and it's not like he's waiting for an answer. He's boom, 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 clearly pushing her into a corner because he's trying to evoke, I guess, some type of reaction.
Yeah.
And he
gets it.
He gets it, and that's exactly what he was looking for. He was trying to figure it out.
Yep.
And he needed to see it for himself. And this is where I thought Carl was like, you know, had a pair on him when he's just like, when Laine is trying to get out of the room and he's not letting her, and she walks out and he grabs her arm. I'm like going, dude, do you know who you're grabbing?
Yeah, exactly.
And she's gonna mind wipe you right here.
Yeah, exactly.
And then notice the lighting shift in this.
Exactly. More for yellow to blue. Just bam.
Yep.
Very clear. Yeah, the lights are out. And it should be pointed out, like, what we saw before, and I'm just going to kind of zap before so we can see it. The blinds are open. Like, they are very clearly painted that the blinds are open, letting in all this light. When we cut back to this after the let's, you know, weirdo internet guy gets killed by the knights. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Very clearly.
He tripped and fell.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Accidental.
Yeah, totally. But we see the lights are on and the shutters are closed.
Yep.
In other words, going from the natural to the unnatural. You know,
it's a very sanitary, sanitized space.
So, again, going along with the logic, you know, if the Laine we all know and love is the human, we have now switched over into the internet Laine, the artificial one, with the artificial light, all that kind of stuff, very much shining down with the blue shift. And then Laine is just, okay, I'm out. And then we have the and again, one of those things I would not expect the show to do in episode 7 is just, okay, yeah, no, there are 2 lanes, just straight up, just definitely. The 2 lanes in one body, no question. Who starts to manifest here, and then again, you're watching this first time, you're like, okay, what is he going to do now? Like, now that she's manifested, he clearly has all the cards. He clearly knows what's going on. She decides to leave, and he lets her. And that's really interesting to me, because what it means is he has no power over her, right? Like, he can't keep her here. He can't do anything about her. He's just here to kind of prod her and push her and move her in some direction. But it's all up to her.
See, the feeling I got from him was the fact that he was, smarter than the rest of the room.
Yeah, true.
And that his breaking the other Laine out and then letting her go is kind of like a force of chaos.
Okay.
He didn't let the other Laine go because he could still physically restrain her. He could have Carl and Squiggy.
Yes.
Little short guys.
Carl and the short guy.
Carl the short guy. He could have that.
Doing this fall,
NBC. That's not a problem. You know what I mean?
Yep. Lost John again.
He's now forced the wall between Laine in the real world and Laine in the wire to break down as he as he notes. It's like, you've made it through. You've made the connection. And now he's releasing her to watch how the cards fall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I could do something physically to stop you, but, I'm going to sit back and just watch how this insanity develops here. I'm like, let's go.
Well, one of the things he keeps saying, though, is that how dangerous this is. And, and so when he lets her out of the room, he says, well, we're actually powerless. He actually says it. We're powerless. We can't really do anything, so we're just going to sit on the side, as he says, sit on the sidelines and kind of watch what's happening. And I'm thinking through this, thinking to myself, going, if this had been some other type of anime or whatever, that would mean that there's a sniper on the roof and Laine does something.
Laine turns to leave and Carl just snaps her neck.
Exactly, yeah.
Now we don't have a problem.
Exactly.
Solution.
Yeah, so Morphball asked in the chat, does Laine notice there are two lanes at this point? I don't think so. She's completely unaware of this split. And
so she is having a lot of anxiety about the possibility of it.
Yeah. And which we will see shortly. So here's where I have to sort of lay out my cards. I think that there are two lanes. There is, and I've said some of this before. I think there is the real physical lane that we see. There is a lane in the wired that is a distinct individual, and I think what's happening in this scene is that the wired lane is syncing with the physical lane. He basically forged a connection between the two to cause that other version of Laine to kind of come out. Because when we see Laine in the internet walking around, she's definitely more aggressive. She's definitely more self-confident. But it's the way we all are on the internet. That sort of more self-confident thing. It's not this kind of dismissive, who the hell are you, I'm getting out thing. This is the Laine we saw in Siberia. So I think this is not another side of physical Laine. I think this is that version of Laine that we're kind of seeing impinging on the real world. But who knows? That's just my theory.
I was saying, we've talked about it over time. It's like, I still feel it's like a dissociative disorder, and that this is a personality characteristic that she's using to shield real Laine from what's going on, because the wired Laine is a much more proactive character and is a much more combative character when necessary. So when faced with this kind of intense grilling, he breaks down real world Laine, who is introverted, who is a fairly nondescript nice girl, with obviously extreme interest in computers, because that extreme interest in computers allows her to be this different character in that world. And he breaks her down, so that personality characteristic comes out to basically say, screw you, no, you're not doing this, I'm leaving. Because it's self-preservation.
And,
who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, and one of the things this show definitely deals with is the fact that, we are not just one personality, right? We present different parts of ourselves, different people. And this is a very Eastern thing, too, the idea that, there's a I forget the term for it, but there's there's the inner you, and then there's the faces that you give to other people.
The id and the super.
And then, Kokoro. There's a lot in here around that. So there are many lanes, right?
Yeah.
You know, who knows which one we're tapping into at this point. And then we get the mother sitting down with her son, just kind of tying off that little plot line of, oh yeah, she just killed a guy.
Teach me how to play this game.
Yeah.
I need to set up my alibi.
Exactly. All right.
I can't hit the fire button after strangling that. The dogs are all tired. What? Nothing? Sorry. My bad.
Yeah.
He tripped into a 1-inch puddle of water. That was
Yep.
just absolutely
Really tragic.
Totally.
Yeah. All that equipment weighed him down.
Yep. It happens, right? Every day. Happens every day.
Yeah. Happened to me last week, but
Yeah.
I got better.
Yeah. There we go.
What?
So then we move into episode 2, which is rumors. Oh, rumors. Layer 08. Which brings us back to Taro. And we find that Laine and Taro are hanging out a little bit. And we get a bunch more of this stuff. And here's where I have to fast forward some things. Because Laine travels from here to an adult site on the Wired to get information. Yeah. And again, as we were saying before, we get a very different Laine here. We get a much more sort of dark, brooding, thoughtful, biting kind of a Laine that we saw before. But she's trying to figure out what the heck's going on with all the time with the kids and so forth and so on.
Which I thought was an interesting element for her to go to a more adult site.
Yeah.
To have a discussion about the 6th and 7th protocol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's like, that would be a very interesting, if you're trying to spy on what she's doing, that I would think would be a red flag. Be like, why would Laine be in this adult site? There's got to be like a weird reason versus like some kind of gaming site or something where it's like, somebody who's trying to monitor her would be like, oh, she's just, looking at cat videos. Oh, that's nothing. You know what I mean? Versus like, this seems like a very specific destination that would alert anybody who was trying to keep a track on her.
And see, I see it from kind of a different angle. I think if you are trying to meet to talk about something serious, an adult site is the perfect place to go where no one is going to assume you're talking about anything serious. Everyone's going to assume that this is just, people are cybering basically all the time. This is the equivalent of hanging out at a street corner, going to a cafe. This is just going to be one of billions of adult sites on the Wired. And so you can kind of safely go. And also, if you're trying to meet up with a serious adult, going to an adult site is a place where people go, oh, he's just hanging out there, whatever, right? It's a very understandable alibi for somebody to have to be there while they're trying to pass on information to somebody. But I don't know. That's an interesting question, Morph. It could not be. It might not be a real porn site. It could just be a site with adult site stuff on it. Certainly possible. It's. I mean,
so at the given time.
Yeah. Oh, lost John for a second.
You can go in the game space. Fighting.
Yep, we're losing John a bit there. Give it a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there are definitely different sites, different possibilities there. John, you back?
Where am I going?
You were having me problems.
Yeah.
Problems I normally have.
Oh, weird.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
We lost you at what kind of site is it?
Oh, well, just in saying that at the time, I don't know that you would have like chat spaces in like an online game or any sort of immersive kind of gaming experience. It's like, because that's an easy
Oh,
way.
you might, but yeah. I hear you.
You know, nowadays, like, you could have a completely straight up legit serious conversation as an elf and a dwarf in like a tavern in some like small towny game space.
Well, that's been true for
knows
decades.
What's going on.
Yeah.
Well, is this? I mean, is it really a chat room? Is it really just the adult site? I mean, are they accessing an adult site, and that's just actually the windows that people are seeing? That's the protective veneer, so that they're actually not in a adult site, but it's the adult site that's shielding them from being viewed, so that there's no real chat room or anything. It just exists because when you're talking about Laine and the Wired, what we're seeing here is to me is a representation of code, and it's just not actual there's Laine, there's people talking, but it's representation of code. So it could be the code behind, because as she's progressing with the computer languages and stuff, they're probably at a point where they're just like going, okay, we're just gonna slip literally. Here's the curtain. It's an adult site. Come on in. Okay, close it. Nobody can come in now. Here we are. Let's have this conversation.
Or it could even be, plussing that further. This could be representing. She is, emailing somebody at hotbabes.xxx. Right, and that's kind of the representation that this is a person working there. This is what he's doing at the time.
Right.
But this is just the conversation she's having with him.
But that's true, because I
that's a great point, Mojo. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about it. It's like, given Laine's code advances and the discussion that she's not having the discussion with like an average noob. Like the kid, playing the sword game. She's talking with somebody else who is just as skilled as she is. So this could be the entire representation of just code to mask. That's not, Steve, you're absolutely. There is not an actual space.
Right,
it's not a place that
right.
they've gone into. This is just they've coded up something to shield firewall from anybody else getting in there. So it's like, easily big.
I also like Mojo Bone's point in the chat that people go to adult shops anonymously, right? That is very much a feature of being an adult shop. So I think that's also kind of a thing they're pulling in here, that you kind of go there, you're trying not to be seen.
Yeah,
we definitely
don't look at me as I look at this point.
Exactly. That's a good call.
Kitty girls from another dimension. No, don't look at me.
And then we get the scene that broke my heart. That John, you're talking about before, where Laine comes in to grab her barley tea, and talk to her parents. And I don't know where I thought this scene was going. But it sure doesn't go the way I thought it would, because she asks them point blank, like somebody said, "You're not my real parents," and that's how they react. Yep, just blank stares.
Well, they're not doing anything. We see Mika again, and Mika is just she is descending into just non-functional behavior. She's just like a wreck. Her parents aren't doing anything. It's not like they're reading the newspaper and watching TV. They're literally sitting silently at the kitchen or the dinner table, and just staring. It's like, did somebody like pull the plug on y'all's personality that you're offline, you're sitting there until she asks that question, and then all you can do for that is turn around and stare at her. I'm like,
and actually, it's more of a glare than a stare.
Yeah,
it is.
Miho has definitely got like some issue going on there. Yasuo is just, it's freaking weird.
So here's my theory. So we see later, and again, this is a little spoilery, that Yasuo's father at one point worked for Tachibana Labs, at least. If he knows that someone at Tachibana Labs has broken through to Laine and has kind of activated Laine, and that things have gotten, a lot deeper than they were before. And this is kind of, this is the aftermath of that discovery. I can totally imagine them being in this state of being like, crap, everything's going to heck, as she walks in. Who knows?
There's there's a redemptive moment where if they had come to that recognition and been like, crap, things are heading downhill fast. Mika's a disaster and things are really getting out of control. You could have made a slight turn in the Titanic. You had addressed her. You know what I mean? Laine is actively reaching out in this moment. Oh, isn't it funny? Somebody said something really strange. If you had delivered some affirmation like, honey, don't believe that. Don't listen to what people say. It's okay. You're our daughter. Things are fine. You know, but you can make a tangible impact on the trajectory that Laine's taking. And neither one of them tries.
I would argue they can't. They are under orders not to. Speaking of the sniper, I think if they tried to do that, they would end up dead in a ditch somewhere.
So you think the Knights are got them in the crosshair?
No,
as well?
no, not the Knights. I think Tachibana Labs does.
Yeah.
I think they are acting out their parts in this drama, and you know, it is not their job to help Laine in that way. It is their job to give her a normal Japanese, you know, household with food and all those things on the table. That is it, and that is all they're doing.
Which is a really interesting commitment to the bit, because even Carl, when she's trying to leave Tachibana Labs, has a moment said, "You're dangerous."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Carl is responsive.
Yes, absolutely.
Outside of the, I'm just supposed to stand here and the boss is talking to you and I'm just going to watch the door.
Totally.
It's like, wow. So Carl, the Men in Black dude, has like more of a slightly compassionate response to her than these hired family people who couldn't even muster up, well, that's not in our order index, so we'll sit here. Like,
the other question is how much of this is real? Right? Is this Laine imagining this scene to herself? Who knows? We've certainly seen that happen before.
Is this the part where everyone realizes the experiment failed?
Right. Yeah. Possible. Definitely possible.
Sitting quietly, realizing that, oh crap, we have to go back to square one.
Yeah.
Dispose of Laine,
bring out the next clone.
Right.
Bring out Kane.
It's like Fractality all around. I'll get over again.
Yeah, there you go.
So let's run this down a little bit. So his father was with Tachibana Labs. Okay.
Her father,
but her father, is with Tachibana Labs, and so they're going through the motions. We know this is a sham at this point. You know, kind of like more or less, even if it's imagined in her mind.
It's either a sham or like, you know, critically criminal.
Right? Yeah. Mika is downgrading and degrading, or actually degrading her functions. Higher level functions are degrading, and Laine is confronted by the I'm assuming the leader of Tachibana, and the other Laine is pulled out. But the other Laine goes back to the Wired, and the physical Laine is back. And is the experiment? Is there disappointment because they're not seeing the Laine at the Wired?
No, I think that the disappointment is they're realizing that somebody else in Tachibana Labs has interfered.
It's right. Well, that's what I mean. It's like maybe the experiment failed because of somebody else's thing. But they were hoping to see the Laine of the Wired, and that they're angry that they're being shut out.
I can see that. Yeah,
because he's invested, because he kind of knows what was going on at the very beginning, and he had the same wait and see kind of attitude as the leader did, and he's fully aware of the Men in Black out there. He has to be. I mean, the damn car is right there.
Yeah,
and so they. What I'm trying to do is figure out the connection of why Mika is even there, and I have a feeling that Mika is a substitute Laine. If the Laine of this, if Laine, which is the primary subject of this experiment, fails, then it would go to Mika. But we've already seen Mika lose the one half, so Mika cannot continue on with the experiment, and as such, she's starting to degrade, and there's no reason to prop her up, so they just let her go. So, because Mika is another kid.
Another part of the kids program. Okay,
it's part of the kids program. So, maybe Mika's a failed Laine, and now that they know that they don't have a backup, and they know now that somebody is interfering with this, or has decided that they're moving too slow and has taken over the project.
Yeah,
they're left with nothing. So everything they've done so far to whatever discovery that they are trying to do is they're done.
I like that theory. I think that the three are or were an actual family, and that Laine is being inserted into it. But the more you say that, the more it makes more sense that they were kind of assembled to serve as a family, There's certainly something going on. The way her parents act do feel to me like two people who care about each other in some way, trapped in a horrific experience, who are just kind of clinging to each other. So that doesn't seem like, oh, I'm just your coworker. But it also could be just that, maybe they liked each other at work and they decided to be, I don't know.
Well, that's interesting that you actually say that, because when they're sitting at the table, they're not sitting opposite. They're sitting together.
Right, yeah, it's true.
That's so they don't have to look at each other. Which, as stupid as that sounds, that might actually be somewhat, because that would be a moment of like confrontation between the two of them.
Yeah.
Whereby they'd have to acknowledge what's going on versus like independently staring off, sitting next to each other.
And it should also be pointed out, this is a ubiquitous thing in any Japanese media. Is people never talk face to face. They always look, both look off into the sunset while they're talking. Right? They're always both facing the same thing. So I don't know. I also just noticed something, and I don't know if this matters. Let's be honest, everything matters. The stuff on the table looks fake. It looks like it's cutouts.
Yeah.
And particularly in that shot of Laine, and I know it's really hard to see, but like the picture in front of her looks like a Terry Gilliam cutout in front of her. And I don't know and I don't know if that's to imply that this scene isn't real, or if that's just because they had absolutely no money when they were making this show. And again, to be clear, like Laine has to pass behind that, so it's literally a cutout, animation wise. Obviously, they had to cut that out so she can move. So again, I don't know, but it's kind of an interesting little detail. Who knows? And so then we can move on to the meat of the episode. This episode, rumors, where poor Alice has to confront Laine about the rumors that is being spread around Alice. And we're going to get into some slightly more adult material here in this episode, so be aware. And we find out, and again, great writing here in terms of how Alice approaches this. She assumes Laine knows what's going on. She's not saying it directly because, of course, she doesn't want to say it out loud. But this nasty rumor has been being spread online about Alice having the hots for teacher. One of the teachers at their school. It is common for all girls' schools to have male and female teachers in Japan, which is a thing. And it has long been a controversy about that in Japan. That you get these, certainly guy teachers can have girls infatuated with them at schools, and it's sort of an open secret that happens a lot, and that sometimes that line gets crossed. So it's definitely playing off that kind of fear and that kind of thing in school. So Laine goes searching, does in a sense the exact wrong thing because she immediately goes on the internet again, which is exactly what Alice is afraid is going on. And we get one of the first, I think, moments in the show really dealing with, like, directly with this problem of the internet and of spreading misinformation. That it happens easily, and you can't stop it, and there's no beginning and end point to it. It's just a big, big mess.
Sorry for the sirens; they're out to get me.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, you're having some. Yeah, your video's a little bit frozen, but we hear you fine.
It's technical Saturday night.
Exactly. And she comes back to this wonderfully creepy moment where everyone is staring at her. And to be clear, personally, I think this isn't like what's happening with her parents. I think what happened here is that, everyone thinks that Laine is passing along information online. She comes into class and immediately gets on her Navi. And everyone's like, yep, we know it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so they're all staring at her. And obviously her teachers asked her a question. And so all eyes are on her.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more mundane creepiness. But definitely creepy. Yes, Morph Ball. Thank you. I'm sorry. Got to return. This is the Twitter scene. That is exactly what that is. That's Yep. Congratulations, Kanaka. And then and to that point, she then runs through the school and everyone's looking at her. Here's where I don't know if this is reality or fantasy, because we've all had this emotional experience,
right?
And that might be what's actually kind of bleeding over to Laine. I don't know.
Well, I think it's highly unlikely that, given the circumstances, everybody would happen to be in those positions to just all be staring at her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now she was running down the hallway screaming. Then, yes, some doors might get open. People might be like, what's going on here?
Yep.
But just everybody happens to be standing around, and people in the courtyard outside all just happen to be looking. It's like, no, I think this is like the adolescent paranoia. Like, oh my God, everybody's looking at me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with Wolfball. It's very heavily implied the same with their parents, but I think plot-wise it's not. I think they're kind of contrasting there, but who knows? And then we get and the show keeps giving. And here's what we're talking about. So here's Laine's Navi. For those curious about what we're talking about, you can see all this stuff kind of bolted onto it, screwed onto it. This ribbon cable connected on, and these other cables going off of it. I agree. That does look like an extra power cable.
Yeah, there's just a lot of cabling going on there.
Yep, absolutely. It's really interesting. And we were actually talking. I love this design of you have this sort of very Palm Pilot-esque thing with a slide-over panel that is a touch screen, which makes sense for the technology of the time, and that's kind of controlling what's on the regular screen. I'm kind of surprised there were no cell phones with this design.
Well, I was going to say, it's very, futuristic. Like, you guys were looking into the actual future versus, the dreamy future. Because, damn,
It's
touch screens, all kinds of, internet capabilities.
Yeah.
Wow, if we could have had those kind of functions back when Laine came out, that would be neat.
It's the fascinating thing about the show is that it very much combined sort of late 90s technology of like the 286s with this very abstract symbolic internet.
Yeah. That came to be.
Yeah, that came to be. And then Laine creates a hole in reality. I don't know what else to call it. As she's sitting there, and we have the whole Gynax expanding ball of light destroying everything in its path. And again, is this all happening inside Laine's head? This is very adolescent. I don't know.
So you're saying this is Laine's sort of I'm crushing your head.
Yeah,
pretty much. I'm gonna set the world on fire and be like fire starter.
And which is very much what this looks like. Absolutely, very fire starter. It would be interesting to see later on if there are any, images of, like, can you see out a window to the burning husk of a storage shed somewhere? I don't know.
Or like some big disc-like shimmering portal thing sitting in the middle of everywhere. Hey, that portal wasn't there before lunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we get the resolution to the whole thing, where we cut to Alice, and the teacher. And boy, this creeped me out the first time I saw it. So I was like, oh, no, that is actually a thing that's happening. And that is totally a thing that Alice is complicit with. And then you realize that Alice is having a moment. Yeah, she's imagining things.
She's aspiring.
She's aspiring
to a situation.
Exactly. Yes.
I see.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Kanaka said the scene was very difficult to get greenlit. I can imagine that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Alice's hand has gone somewhere.
To another dimension.
Yeah. And then she discovers Laine on her bed, watching this and giggling the entire time.
Which honestly, if one of you two, I turn around and you were like standing in my house, I'd be like,
I'd be like, John was a moblet.
and like, literally for what's going on, Alice is panicked about what she's doing. She's not paying attention to the fact that Laine's in her room.
Mm-hmm.
Laine never walks through the door.
Mm-hmm.
Laine's just quietly sitting watching her.
Yep.
She notes, you're sitting quietly and watching me. It's like, dude, that's not the mental part we gotta like wrap our skull around. It's like, back away from your embarrassment and let's talk about the problem here.
Well, actually, watching this awkward scene, which is very awkward because at first I'm like going, okay, well, the thing with the teacher is creepy. Oh, there we are. Okay, and then going into that, and then and then there's Laine sitting on the bed, and I was thinking, again like that, I was just like going, I would not if I were Alice, I would not be at that moment. Any thought about being caught in the act is gone because I was like, how the F did you get in here? So I don't think that was real.
Oh.
You think this is her internet fantasy? And it's
yes, I think she is online with the teacher.
Oh.
And Laine is peering in onto the conversation,
and makes tremendous sense.
And Laine allows herself to be seen on the internet.
Yeah.
Spying in on Alice and the teacher having this conversation.
Because I was noticing that this does have the feel of a lot of the other scenes where folks kind of are in this sort of liminal space where they're not quite reacting the normal way, which is normally when like technology is involved and so forth and so on, and obviously like the wires, frequency or whatever is messing with their brains. But I think that totally makes sense, especially because in the previous scene it's happening in her room. So I think it's just, we're lowering the imagination a little bit, but we're still kind of in that same scenario.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, that
totally
makes
works.
absolute sense to not
Great.
react to like how they get in here. And then that comment subsequently about sitting there quietly is like, Laine is cracked into whatever their conversation is and has been sitting there quietly as they're streaming along their textual adventure.
Yeah. And it could be, if we want to get a little less creepy, it's also possible she's like telling this to a friend, right? Like she's talking about her fantasies to somebody. She's posting a story online or something.
Sure.
A fanfic.
Fanfic, exactly.
I mean, at the time, it would be easy
totally
to like throw a worm down and grab some doc file from somebody's computer and then read their fanfic.
Yeah.
That could easily be too, but it definitely makes it much more sensible. This is all a virtual element that she's intruding on, not the necessarily physical space.
Although, just wait. Oh boy, but yeah, no, I love that. And then we get the horrific but very effective transition between Alice, horrified and distressed, and Laine horrified and distressed in her own bed, for completely different reasons. Because Laine has no idea what's going on. She's not part of any of this, but she knows that Alice is freaking out. And one could argue that if there are multiple things going on in her head right now, Laine may have an inkling that her other self is doing this. Which would definitely freak her out.
And I liked the lightning on the wires as it's going, sort of shooting around like.
Yep, totally.
Well, isn't that the point where she does reach out to Alice and she looks for Alice?
I don't think so. Because this is the point where Laine confronts herself.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Nakamura's directing is out of the park on this one. Because Laine literally just starts throttling herself, and
committing suicide.
Yeah, but one of my favorite lines in the entire show, especially the delivery by Laine's English voice actress, is just that completely crazy. I'm committing suicide. It's just great. Very, very creepy, and gets to this point of if there are multiple me's floating around, like you can't just kill one part of me. That just doesn't work. And so God shows up.
To make things better, God shows up. Holy crap.
Yeah. So clearly Laine's having some issues.
Really?
Shattering dolls.
You see, that's where I think that there's some... You could argue that those are the elements of Laine stretched out across the plane there.
Yeah,
those
all
are the
versions.
different characteristic elements of her.
Yeah,
different
totally.
personalities.
Totally.
And then God.
For
reasons.
Yeah. And so this individual who calls itself God begins to speak to her out of this amorphous, liquid metal thing floating in there. And I remember seeing something, and I may be wrong with this, where they said they wanted something that just symbolized complete abstraction. What is the least, what is the most abstract thing we can possibly think of that is still physically existent, and just kind of an amorphous blob was what they came up with. But again, there's obviously stuff around this, and there are various places I could go with that, which I will not right now. I agree, Morph, that this is also representing the rumors, quite literally. The rumors spreading to all these different people, possibly through the Laine of the Wire. And so Laine she does the thing. She decides to use her powers kind of consciously for the first time, and we get deleting thrown on the screen. And again, it should be pointed out, this is the original. This is not they put this in English on the original version, partly because English is the original language of the internet and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that is a thing that's happening, so that Laine can show up. And suddenly, or Laine can go to school and everything's fine.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Not quite. Because once everything looks great,
it's like a fanfic. It's the fine if you dream it that it's fine. It's not the reality that it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And yeah,
wavy.
No. Because Laine bifurcates. And we see two different versions of Laine. Now, I'm still a little unclear on... Well, I'm not unclear. I think there are multiple different interpretations of this scene. Imagine that.
No.
Yeah. Personally, I think this is Laine's own imagining. I think this is Laine projecting what's going to happen in the future, and she's kind of looking at herself and how this scene would play out. Much like the earlier scene with Mika. That this is kind of another version of her that she's kind of observing in the real world and imagine what's going on.
Idealized what would happen with all the crew.
Yeah, exactly. So the Morph is saying, even if you delete other people's memories, you still you yourself still remember, which is what this scene represents. Yeah. So this problem of even if she deletes everyone else's memories, she still knows what happens, and that doesn't fully solve the problem because you still have the guilt.
And then that Laine.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, right, there are multiple me's. That's a problem. Show up in the scene, but again, it could be many things. It could be literally happening, physically happening. I don't know.
Somebody just needs to go unplug her modem.
Right, exactly. Yes.
So many things.
Go play outside.
With real people, not with duplicates of you. Don't do that. Stay away from Siberia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then Laine fades away, and again, this is why I think it's kind of like that earlier scene where she's just, it's different versions of herself, kind of imagining things. But who knows?
Well, it reminded me of the scene with Mika.
Mm-hmm.
When Mika saw herself disappear, and one side was fine with it and the other was not.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it looked like to me, and at first I was just trying to figure out if this is going to be the real world Laine or if this is the wired Laine. Mm-hmm. Because if you just delete it on the wire, then it doesn't mean anything because it's still happening in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the real world Laine, then what that means is that the body is still there, but the Laine that is the original, we'll call her original Laine, is now taking a back seat, and now the Laine of the wired is now in control, driving the car.
Yeah.
And she's telling her that, herself that.
Right.
Hey, the more aggressive me is grabbing Alice by the arm.
Yep.
And we're going off, and we're going to do the things that you've always wanted to do, but never wanted to do.
Yep.
At the same time, and so bye-bye. I'm in charge now.
Yep.
So I think the Laine of the wired now is in control.
It's ascendant.
Yes, ascendant. Whereas before she just pops in and pops out. Now she's just like, oh, thank you for deleting these memories because that means that I can come in and sneak in and just here I am now.
And it's that fundamental problem as Morph is saying in the chat. Like it's I keep pointing over here. It's down there. That you have Laine is literally bifurcating her reality. She is setting up this. Everyone else now thinks this thing. I know it's not true, and so now I have to create two different versions of myself: the external one and the internal one, and that's not great psychologically, as we all know.
No, it's not. Is it, Steve? Why no? No.
I liked the fade scene because it felt like there is a Laine that we are watching fade away in the process as the wired Laine is ascendant, as trying to tinker with the reality of deleting things to reset stuff. It's almost like the act of utilizing whatever power she has to do that has chipped away at the core Laine that there is. So as you're seeing her fading, it's like there's a cost to what she's doing, and that is slowly eliminating her as the Laine in the real world.
Yeah, she's lost her innocence.
Yeah,
in some fundamental way. And again, what I like is we cut back to her her real physical self, and this is clearly not Laine of the Wired here. Like there's loss. There's she's crying a little bit. She's clearly conflicted, but I completely agree that like she's lost something. She's not just the pure innocent oh no girl that we saw before. Because actions have consequences. Imagine that. And we get this
the law of equivalent exchange.
Not this show. And we get this wonderful iconic scene of all the stuff floating around Laine. And FYI, this is one of the scenes that will let you know if you're watching the remaster or the original version. In the original version, this is basically just little blue screens and a little bit of glowing stuff around there. You cannot see any of the other stuff in the scene. The contrast was off. So it was just kind of blackness. And I love how much more this scene communicates with just all of the sea of wires and all this stuff going on around her. It still has the same isolation to it, but it adds so much more to it. So really,
in her technological cocoon.
yes, exactly, which is precisely the end credits as well. So yes, so stuff's happened. Definitely.
It was just a boring episode. Nothing really happened.
And it's interesting because early on in the show, you know, I think one of the reasons this episode resonates so much is because at this point we've had enough of these characters that it you know, early on in the show we're still kind of getting a sense for everybody, but by this point this really puts you through the emotional ringer. In a way that weird stuff is happening in the early episodes. You know, guy puts a gun to his mouth, but that doesn't have the impact of just, you know, Laine betraying Alice in this episode.
Right.
It's great. Yeah, exactly, Morph. Hey man, you can think a certain way, but aren't allowed to say it because it would get you in trouble. You know, not relevant at all these days. So. Anyway, so yeah, that will do it. So we're gonna take a quick break for just a few minutes. Actually, before we do that, hold on. Any other thoughts you guys have about these two episodes that you wanted to get across?
I need therapy.
It just keeps delivering.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think the episode 8 was the turn point where I finally feel like, okay, mystery, think, dun 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 dun. And this is, like, to me, the first action episode, wherein that things are, you know, now that everything's set up, it feels like the dominoes are now going to start falling.
Yep. Mm-hmm. You're right. Cool. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be back to talk about some more modern anime and the latest anime news. We will be right back.